After what happened during the election, some Dems are saying that they have the momentum and that Tuesday's election shows voters have turned on President Trump. So what might this mean for next year's midterms? Because a lot of people are shifting to that now.
They didn't necessarily believe him, but for Democrats, those polls are real and they are spectacular. And the reason I say that is because take a look here. Voted for the Democratic nominee among Trump disapprovers. I got 2017, Trump's first term, and 2025 in New Jersey and Virginia. In 2017, among the Trump disapprovers, the Democratic nominees got 82% in New Jersey, 87% in Virginia. Come over to this side of the screen. If there is any idea that Republicans are going to be able to outrun Donald Trump's low approval ratings, this says, nah, they're going to be like impalas getting chased down in the African desert by a big lion. Look at this. 93% of Trump disapprovers voted for the Democratic nominee in New Jersey, and 92% voted for them in the great Commonwealth of Virginia. The bottom line is this. What those results on Tuesday night showed us is that Donald Trump is absolutely a drag.
All right. So let me ask you something. When was the last time you saw Trump's legal team actually sweating? Like really sweating? Because right now they're in full panic mode, and honestly, I can't blame them. A massive DOJ leak just dropped, and it's not just any leak. This thing is exposing how prosecutors might have bent the rules while going after Trump. Yeah, you heard that right. The same people who've been pushing this document's case for months, turns out they might not have been playing fair. And look, I know what you're thinking. Another Trump legal drama, right? But hold on, because this one's different. This leak has Republicans on Capitol Hill absolutely losing it. We're talking full-on panic stations. GOP pollsters are sounding alarm bells. Trump's team is demanding $230 million from the DOJ. $230 million. Can you believe this? And the timing? Oh man, the timing couldn't be worse for everyone involved. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
I mean, at this particular point, Donald Trump is at term 2 lows nationally in terms of his net approval rating. Look at this. These are polls that are out this week. Look at the CNN. He was 26 points underwater. CBS, 18 points underwater. ABC, 18 points underwater. The NBC Hart Public Opinion Strategies poll, he was 12 points underwater. My goodness gracious, he's down there with the Titanic, and this is what is turning in for the Republican Party. That result on Tuesday night was a Titanic proportion, just absolutely awful result. New Jersey, Virginia, Pennsylvania, in terms of those judgeships, those Supreme Court judgeships, essentially, retaining those judges. All the Democratic line candidates won. Democrats won their first statewide races that weren't federal in Georgia for the first time in a generation. What we are talking about at this particular point is Donald Trump is absolutely a drag. I spoke about it on Monday. That's what we thought was going to happen, and that is exactly what did happen.
So here's what happened. Internal DOJ notes got leaked, like actual prosecutorial notes that were supposed to stay buried deep inside some government filing cabinet. But nope, they're out there now, all over social media, all over the news, everywhere. And these notes, they suggest that prosecutors reviewing Trump's documents at Mar-a-Lago might have been cutting corners, maybe ignoring due process, maybe not following their own rules. Yeah, come on. The irony is thick here, right? Now Trump's legal team sees this leak and they're like, hold up. This proves what we've been saying all along. Malicious prosecution, unfair treatment, privacy violations, the whole 9 yards. And they're not just complaining about it. Oh no, they're going nuclear. They want compensation. They want investigations. They want heads to roll at the DOJ. And honestly, part of me gets it. If those notes really show what Trump's team says they show, then yeah, that's a problem. A big problem. But here's where it gets really wild. The Republican Party is tearing itself apart over this. Some GOP leaders are backing Trump hardcore, demanding DOJ investigations, calling for accountability, the usual stuff. But then you've got other Republicans, and this is the interesting part, who are actually distancing themselves. They're questioning Trump's legal strategy. They're worried about how this looks to independent voters. They're scared this whole mess is going to tank them in swing states. And speaking of swing states, let's talk about the elephant in the room. This leak drops right when polling matters most. Right when every single vote in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, all those battleground states, every vote counts. And now you've got this massive controversy about DOJ conduct, about fairness, about whether Trump's been treated right or wrong. It's catnip for undecided voters, and not in a good way for anyone. CNN's Harry Enton, their polling guy, He basically said Republicans have reason to panic, not might have reason, present tense, active panic. Because here's the thing about independent voters. They don't like messy legal drama. They don't like institutional scandals. They don't like feeling like nobody's playing by the rules, whether that's Trump or the DOJ or anyone else. And this leak, it makes everyone look bad. So Trump's team is scrambling, like full scramble mode. They're filing motions. They're doing press conferences. They're going on every news show that'll have them because they know this is their moment. If they can spin this leak the right way, if they can make it about DOJ misconduct instead of Trump's documents, then maybe, just maybe, they turn this whole thing around. But that's a big if. And the Democrats? Oh man, they're in damage control too. Because nobody at the DOJ wanted these notes going public. Nobody wanted to explain why their prosecutors maybe weren't following protocol. Nobody wanted to answer questions about whether this whole case was built on shaky ground. But now they got to answer those questions. They got to explain themselves. And every day they spend explaining is a day they're not talking about whatever they wanted to talk about. This is one of those stories that's going to ripple for weeks, maybe months, because it's not just about one leak or one case. It's about trust. Do people trust the DOJ to prosecute fairly? Do people trust Trump when he says he's being persecuted? Do people trust Republicans to handle this without imploding? These are the questions everyone's asking right now. And honestly, I'm not sure anyone's got good answers. The whole thing feels like a powder keg, you know? One spark and everything could blow up even more than it already has. And that spark could be anything. Another leak, a court ruling, a statement from the wrong person at the wrong time. It's all so fragile right now, so volatile, and everyone involved knows it. So buckle up, because we're going to break down exactly what's in this leak, why it matters so much, who's panicking and why, and what this means for everyone involved. We're going to look at the political chess game being played. We're going to talk about what this means for trust in institutions. We're going to get into the Republican Civil War that's brewing. This is going to be a ride. And honestly, I don't think anyone knows where it ends. Okay, so let's dig into what this leak actually says. Because the headlines are dramatic, sure, but the details are where this gets really interesting. And also really messy. And also kind of scary if you think about what it means for how justice is supposed to work in this country. So these internal DOJ notes, right? They were never supposed to see daylight. These are the kind of documents prosecutors keep for their own reference. Strategy notes, process notes. Basically the behind the scenes stuff that shows how they're building their case. The stuff they write when they think nobody's watching. And someone, we don't know who yet, decided to leak them. Just put them out there for the world to see. And that alone is wild, because leaking prosecutorial notes is not normal, like at all. That's the kind of thing that gets people fired, maybe even charged, maybe even prosecuted themselves. But what's in the notes is even wilder, according to what's been reported. And look, we're working with leaked documents here, so grain of salt. But according to reports, these notes suggest prosecutors might have been playing fast and loose with how they reviewed Trump's documents, specifically documents seized during that Mar-a-Lago search. You know, the one with the FBI showing up and going through everything? Yeah, that search, the one that was all over the news for weeks. The notes apparently show that prosecutors had questions about whether they were following proper protocols, questions about whether certain documents should have been reviewed at all, questions about whether they were respecting attorney-client privilege, questions about chain of custody, questions about whether they had the right legal authority to look at certain materials. And here's the kicker. Some of these questions were raised by people inside the DOJ. Like, their own team members were saying, hey, are we doing this right? Should we be looking at this stuff? Are we crossing lines we shouldn't cross? And those concerns might have been, let's say, not fully addressed. Now, Trump's legal team sees this and they're like, boom, evidence. This is exactly what we've been saying. The prosecution wasn't fair. The search wasn't fair. The whole thing's been rigged from the start, and they're demanding $230 million in compensation. Why $230 million? I have no idea. That seems like a very specific number. Like, did they calculate hourly rates for emotional distress or something? But they're claiming privacy violations, illegal search procedures, malicious prosecution, all of it. They want the DOJ to pay up big time. And look, whether you love Trump or hate Trump, you gotta admit, if those notes really show what his team says they show, that's concerning. Because here's the thing about prosecutions, especially high-profile ones. They have to be squeaky clean. They have to follow every rule, every procedure, every protocol. Because the moment there's a question about fairness, the whole case gets tainted. The defense gets ammunition. Juries get skeptical. Judges start asking hard questions. It's a mess. But then there's the other side of this. Because we don't have all the notes, right? We have a leak. Leaks are selective by nature. Whoever leaked these notes chose what to leak. They chose what to highlight. They chose how to frame it. They chose which pages made it out and which pages stayed hidden. So maybe these notes look worse than they actually are. Maybe there's context we're missing. Maybe those internal questions got answered and resolved properly, and we're just not seeing that part. Maybe the next page of notes says, never mind, we checked with legal, and we're good to proceed. We don't know, and that's part of what makes this so frustrating. What we do know is the political fallout is real, like very real. Republicans on Capitol Hill are freaking out, and it's not hard to see why. This leak drops, and suddenly everyone's talking about DOJ misconduct instead of whatever message Republicans wanted to push. It's a distraction. It's a controversy. It's a headache. And it's dominating the news cycle when they need to be talking about literally anything else. Some Republicans are going all in, defending Trump. They're calling for investigations into the DOJ. They're demanding accountability. They're saying this proves the deep state is real and is out to get Trump. They're calling for special prosecutors to investigate the prosecutors. They're demanding resignations. They're holding press conferences. And their base loves that message. Trump's core supporters eat this stuff up. It confirms everything they already believed about government corruption and unfair treatment and the system being rigged. But then you've got other Republicans who are way more nervous. These are the ones thinking about swing districts, thinking about suburban voters, thinking about independents who might be turned off by all this drama, thinking about moms in the suburbs who are tired of chaos. And they're looking at this leak thinking, oh no, this is going to hurt us. This is going to make us look like we're just defending Trump no matter what he does. This is going to cost us votes we can't afford to lose. Because independent voters don't necessarily rally around Trump when he's in legal trouble. They get tired of it. They tune out. They roll their eyes. They start thinking maybe it's time for something different, someone less dramatic, someone who doesn't come with 3-ring circus of legal controversies. They vote for the other guy, or they just stay home. And either way, that's bad for Republicans. And the polling backs this up. Harry Enton from CNN basically said Republicans have legit reasons to panic. He didn't sugarcoat it. He straight up said this is the kind of thing that moves numbers in the wrong direction. Because this kind of controversy, this kind of institutional messiness, it makes persuadable voters uncomfortable. They don't like feeling like the justice system is broken, whether it's broken in Trump's favor or against him. They just want things to work properly. They want to trust that when prosecutors go after someone, they're doing it the right way. And when it doesn't look like things are working properly, when it looks like maybe nobody's following the rules, they punish whoever's in charge, which right now is, well, everyone. So you've got this split in the Republican Party. The MAGA wing wants to weaponize this leak, turn it into a crusade against the DOJ, make it the central narrative for everything going forward. The establishment wing wants to move on, change the subject, focus on literally anything else. Policy, the economy, education, healthcare, anything but Trump's legal drama. And that tension is playing out in real time on social media, in interviews, in private conversations that then get leaked to reporters. It's a whole thing. You can see it happening if you're paying attention. Meanwhile, Trump himself is doing what Trump does. He's ranting about it. He's posting about it. He's calling it a witch hunt, a disgrace, proof of corruption. He's making this as big and loud and dramatic as possible because for Trump, attention is oxygen. In a massive DOJ scandal, that's a lot of oxygen. That's like being in a room with unlimited oxygen. So he's breathing it all in, making himself the victim, making this about him versus a corrupt system, him versus the swamp, him versus everyone who's trying to take him down. But here's what's really interesting. This leak might actually help Trump legally, like genuinely help his defense. Because if his lawyers can prove that prosecutors violated his rights, that they didn't follow proper procedures, that they cut corners, that they looked at stuff they shouldn't have looked at, then they can file motions to dismiss. They can argue the evidence was obtained improperly. They can argue the whole case is fruit of the poisonous tree. That's an actual legal term, by the way. And judges take that stuff seriously, really seriously. So in a weird way, this leak that's causing so much political chaos might be exactly what Trump needed. Not politically, necessarily, but legally. It gives his team ammunition, real ammunition, not just talking points. It gives them arguments they didn't have before, arguments that might actually work in court. It puts the DOJ on defense. And in a legal fight, being on offense instead of defense is huge. It changes the whole dynamic. But then there's the flip side. Because this leak also keeps Trump's legal troubles in the headlines. Day after day after day, it keeps the focus on documents, on searches, on prosecutions, on all the stuff that exhausts regular voters, the stuff that makes people say, oh my God, not this again. Can we please talk about something else? And for Republicans trying to win swing voters, that's bad news. They want to talk about the economy, about policy, about the future, about making people's lives better. They don't want to talk about Trump's legal drama for the millionth time. They're so tired of talking about it. So you've got this situation where what's good for Trump's legal defense might be bad for Republican electoral chances, and what might help Republicans politically, which is moving past this, would be bad for Trump's defense, which needs this to be a big deal, which needs everyone paying attention, which needs the outrage to stay fresh. It's a mess of conflicting interests, and nobody really knows how to navigate it. There's no playbook for this. And all of this is happening on social media in real time. Every new detail gets dissected. Every statement from Trump's team gets amplified. Every Republican who comments gets clipped and shared and turned into content. It's a feeding frenzy. And in that environment, nuance dies. Everything becomes tribal. You're either Team Trump or Team DOJ. You're either outraged about the leak or outraged about Trump. There's no middle ground. No room for saying, well, it's complicated, because complicated doesn't get clicks. This is why the next few weeks are going to be so critical, because this story is not going away. The DOJ is going to have to respond. Trump's team is going to keep pushing. Republicans are going to keep splitting over how to handle it. And all the while, voters are watching and making decisions about who to trust and who to support. It's high stakes stuff, really high stakes. All right, so let's break this down into the core pieces, because there's a lot happening here and it's easy to get lost in the noise. There's so much noise, but really this whole situation comes down to 3 or 4 major things. Let's walk through them one by one and try to make sense of this chaos. First, the leak itself. Someone inside the DOJ or someone with access to DOJ documents decided to leak these prosecutorial notes. And that's a huge deal on its own. DOJ leaks don't just happen by accident. Someone made a choice. Someone decided these notes needed to be public. Someone took a risk, a big risk. And the question is why? What was the motive? What were they trying to accomplish? One possibility is whistleblowing. Maybe someone inside the DOJ saw these notes and thought, this isn't right. People need to know about this. I'm going to leak it. That's the generous interpretation. That's the someone's trying to expose wrongdoing interpretation. Someone's being a hero. And if that's true, then yeah, maybe this person's a hero. Maybe they're protecting Trump's rights by exposing prosecutorial misconduct. Maybe they're protecting the integrity of the justice system by showing when prosecutors go off the rails. But there's another possibility. Maybe this leak was strategic. Maybe someone who supports Trump or someone who wants to undermine the prosecution deliberately leaked these notes to damage the case, to create chaos, to give Trump's lawyers ammunition, to shift public opinion, to make the DOJ look bad at exactly the right moment. That's the cynical interpretation. And honestly, it's just as plausible, maybe more plausible. We don't know which it is. We probably won't know for a while. Maybe we'll never know, but it matters because it affects how we should think about this leak. Is this a whistleblower exposing corruption? Or is this a political operative playing games? The answer changes everything, changes how we interpret the notes, changes what this means, changes who the good guys and bad guys are. Second, what the notes actually show. And this is where it gets tricky because we're relying on incomplete information. We know the notes suggest some kind of irregularities in how prosecutors handled Trump's documents. We know Trump's team is claiming this proves malicious prosecution. We know there were internal questions about whether proper procedures were followed. We know people inside the DOJ were raising concerns, but we don't know the full context. We don't know if those questions were resolved. We don't know if the concerns were legitimate or overblown. We don't know if this is actually evidence of misconduct or just normal prosecutorial deliberation that looks bad when taken out of context. We don't know if the next page of notes completely clarifies everything and makes it all okay. And here's the thing, prosecutions are messy. Behind the scenes, they're always messy. There are always judgment calls, always gray areas, always internal debates about strategy and procedure, always lawyers arguing with other lawyers about the right way to do things. That doesn't necessarily mean anything wrong happened. It might just mean prosecutors were being thorough, asking hard questions, making sure they were doing things right, which is actually what you want prosecutors to do. But perception matters more than reality in politics. And the perception right now is that something shady went down. Trump's team is pushing that narrative hard. Republicans who support Trump are amplifying it. Conservative media is running with it. And once that perception sets in, it's really hard to shake. Even if the DOJ comes out and explains everything perfectly, the damage is done, the doubt is there, the seed is planted. Third, the political fallout. And oh man, this is where things get really messy because Republicans are splitting over this in real time. You can watch it happening. You've got the pro-Trump faction saying, see, we told you the system is rigged. This proves everything. Let's go all in on attacking the DOJ. Let's make this the whole ball game. And you've got the more cautious faction saying, wait, This is dangerous. This makes us look chaotic. We need to be careful how we handle this. We need to think about how this plays with voters. We actually need to win. And both sides have a point. The pro-Trump side is right that if there really was prosecutorial misconduct, that's a massive scandal that needs to be exposed and addressed. You can't just let prosecutors violate people's rights, even if that person is Trump, especially if that person is Trump, because if they'll do it to him, they'll do it to anyone. But the cautious side is right that swing voters don't love endless Trump drama, and this could hurt Republicans electorally. It could cost them seats. It could cost them control. It could cost them everything. So what do you do if you're a Republican politician right now? Like, seriously, what's the play? Do you defend Trump and risk alienating moderates? Do you stay quiet and risk angering the base? Do you criticize the DOJ and feed into distrust of institutions? Do you defend the DOJ and look like you're not supporting your own party's leader? There's no good answer. Every choice has downsides. Every path forward has landmines. You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. And the Democrats are loving this, by the way. Not the DOJ leak itself, obviously, because that's a problem for them. That's a headache they don't need. But the Republican infighting, the GOP panic, the chaos and confusion, that's exactly what Democrats want to see. Because as long as Republicans are fighting amongst themselves about how to handle Trump's legal issues, they're not focused on winning elections. They're not focused on messaging. They're not focused on policy. They're just focused on not tearing themselves apart. And that's great news for Democrats. Fourth, what this means going forward. And this is the big question. Does this leak actually change anything? Or is it just more noise in an already noisy environment? Is this a turning point? Or just another chapter in an endless saga? Legally, it might change things. If Trump's lawyers can use this leak to challenge the prosecution, if they can get evidence thrown out or the case dismissed or at least delayed, then yeah, it's a game changer. That's huge, but that's a big if. Courts don't throw out cases easily. They don't dismiss prosecutions just because things got a little messy behind the scenes. They'd need clear proof of serious misconduct, not just some notes that suggest maybe things weren't perfect. They'd need smoking gun level stuff. Politically, it's definitely changing things. It's dominating the conversation. It's forcing Republicans to take sides. It's giving Trump ammunition for his persecution narrative. It's making the DOJ look bad. It's creating distrust in institutions. All of that has consequences, real consequences. But will it change votes? Will it actually move the needle in swing states? That's less clear. Because here's the thing about voters, especially independent voters. They've already made up their minds about Trump's legal troubles. Mostly. The people who think he's being persecuted unfairly already thought that before this leak. This just confirms what they believed. The people who think he broke the law and deserves prosecution already thought that too. This doesn't change their minds. It just reinforces existing beliefs. Everyone's already dug into their positions. What it might do is change turnout. If Trump supporters get really fired up about this, really angry about DOJ misconduct, they might turn out in bigger numbers. They might be more motivated, more energized, more willing to knock on doors and make phone calls and drag their friends to the polls. But if moderate Republicans get exhausted by more Trump drama, they might stay home. They might just decide it's not worth it. That's the real electoral question. Not who wins persuadable voters, but who shows up to vote, who's motivated and who's exhausted. So where does this leave us? Honestly, in a state of maximum chaos. Trump's legal team is on the offensive. Republicans are panicking and splitting. The DOJ is scrambling to contain the damage. Democrats are trying to figure out how to respond without looking like they're defending prosecutorial misconduct. And voters are watching all of this, trying to make sense of it, trying to figure out who's telling the truth, trying to decide who deserves their trust. The next few weeks are going to tell us a lot. We're going to see if the DOJ can explain these notes satisfactorily. We're going to see if Trump's team can turn this into real legal victories. We're going to see if Republicans can unite around a coherent message, or if they keep fracturing into smaller and smaller pieces. We're going to see if voters care about this as much as the political class thinks they do. We're going to see who's right about how this plays. But one thing's for sure, this leak just made everything more complicated, more contentious, more uncertain. And in an already chaotic political environment, more chaos is the last thing anyone needs, except maybe Trump. Because Trump thrives in chaos. He always has. He feeds on it. He turns it into energy. He uses it to his advantage. While everyone else is trying to make sense of the chaos, Trump's already 3 moves ahead, using it to his benefit. So keep watching this space, because this story's got legs. It's going to run and run. And before it's over, it's going to shake up a lot of assumptions about what's possible and who's vulnerable and what the rules actually are anymore. This is just the beginning, the opening act. And if the opening act is this crazy, imagine what's coming next. Stay tuned.